lovely. Welcome to the first of the beginner series, where I am going to take you through step by step from the very start of how to crochet. This one I'm going to talk a little bit about how to hold your hook, how to hold the yarn, and then we'll move on to how to make a slip knot, how to make a chain stitch, and then we'll work our way through the series. Okay, so just to let you know, I am based in the UK, but I do use US terminology. That's just how I learned when I started crocheting. However, I will always mention the UK version, just so that you can follow along regardless of what terminology that you follow. For the purposes of today, I'm going to start with using a 4.5mm hook. You can use whatever hook you want when you're practicing, because we're not following a pattern, we're just learning how to hold the hook, hold the yarn and work some stitches. I would suggest though that when you are starting out that you use a slightly bigger hook, because it's easier to manipulate, and also the same with yarn. Today I'm using just a regular DK double knit yarn. It's acrylic and easy to work with. I think this is a Stylecraft brand. I'll leave the link below if you want to check it out, but any yarn will be fine. Okay, so we'll get started with how the hooks and the yarn works. So first thing is to know is you should use your dominant hand. There is a left and a right-handed version of this video, so just check the description and make sure it's the correct one. Okay, so next thing I want to say is that your dominant hand will hold the hook, and your non-dominant hand will hold the yarn. Okay, the next thing to talk about is how to hold your hook. There's two main ways. There's lots of ways of holding a hook, but there's two main ways. Option one is to hold it like a pencil. So when you were learning to write, you would be trained to hold your pencil like a tripod. So 3 fingers together making a sort of dart pointy motion, as if you were throwing a dart or holding a pencil. So your thumb, your index finger, that's your pointing finger, and your middle finger will all make a little sort of pyramid together, bunched together to hold the hook, just like you would if you were using a pen or a pencil. The second type of hook holding, the second type of hold is a knife grip. I might imagine this time that you're eating your dinner, fork and knife, and you're cutting your food with your knife, so it's the same grip that you would have if you were using a dinner knife. So that's where your palm will be more in play here. Your palm will be working alongside your thumb, which will hold one side of the hook. Your index finger will be in play again, and the middle finger will be used more to rest, along with the other fingers as well. Will be used more to rest rather than actually hold it at the fingertips. So it's just really a case of trying out and seeing which way fits you best, which way feels most comfortable and natural for you. Don't let anyone tell you really that there's a right or wrong way. It's really just a matter of finding what works for you, and you'll only know that when you've tried several ways. Okay, so, and also not to give up on the first attempt. It's all going to feel awkward at the start because it's new to you. So if you think back, if you can, to when you started learning how to write using your pencil or a crayon or a pen when you were little, at the start you had shaky writing movements. It was all new to you. Your hand would be achy. It would take you a long time. Things didn't flow very easily. And then over time, when you get used to it, the feel becomes second nature. It becomes flowing, it becomes easy, and you end up not really having to think much about it. So it's the same idea when you are using a crochet hook, or any other tool really, to be honest. So just try it out and give it a chance. What I will say though is that the same as when you were learning to write, your wrist can get really achy, and that's because you're using the wrong part of your hand and arm to support the work, and that your hand and your wrist is doing all the work. Whereas you actually want to make sure your hand and your wrist are doing the minimum amount of movement as possible, and it's actually the hook that's doing the majority of the work. And that's how we prevent having sore wrists, carpal tunnel, arthritis problems, that sort of thing. So you want to protect yourself as you're starting out with your hobby. You don't want it to end up hurting you. So I would definitely suggest working on trying to do as minimal movement as you can in your wrist as you get going. Having said that, I personally use a knife grip because I find it works better to prevent sore wrists than the pencil grip. Other people might find that different, but that's how my hand works. So to use my hook, you'll see that I have a hook that's quite wide. It's more like a handle, and it's got a tapered sort of shaft. So the shaft, the handle and the hook, my hook and my shaft are made of metal, and then the wider part is the handle and it's made of wood, and I find that that's quite a comfortable grip for my palm. It's not too cold, it's going to annoy my hand, and it's a nice feeling. So, but you will find a hook again that fits you. There's so many different kinds you can get. These ones are relatively inexpensive. I just got them on Amazon, but they're my go-to favourites. I've got so many different types of hooks, but these are my favourites. My only issue with them is that over time the numbers will wear off because they're just printed on. So if I had a wish list, I would get them burned into it so that it wouldn't rub off, or colour coded in some way. I did try colour coding them one time, I think with nail polish. It didn't quite work out as I'd wanted. Anyway, overall I find that these hooks are the best suited for me. I do find as well that metal end hooks are the best for gliding. You don't want your yarn to be squeaking and sticking, and whilst I love certain ergonomic plastic hooks, like the Prim ones, they are made of plastic and they do squeak a wee bit, and you can't really beat metal on there. I don't really like using all wooden hooks. I find them a bit sticky to use as well. So this is the best of both worlds in my opinion. I'll leave a link below to these hooks if you were interested in having a look at them. Okay, the next thing is to talk about the yarn and how we hold the yarn, and your non-dominant hand is the one that's in charge here. What we're wanting to do is to create a tension. Tension's just a fancy way of saying a bit like Goldilocks, not too tight, not too loose, just right. So we want the yarn not to be bunching and just doing what it wants itself, and we don't want it so tight that it might break or hurt our fingers and make stitches too tight. We want it to be just right. Okay, so when we are using our hand for tension, there's lots of different ways, just the same as using a hook. There's lots of different ways to use it. The basics is that you want your tension to be wrapped around your finger or your palm in such a way that it's creating a movement, but not too tight that it hurts your fingers. You see, we don't want it tight like that, but at the same point we don't want it sticky and wobbly as well. So again, there's lots of ways of making a tension that's just right. I'll show you the way that I do it. I would also say that if you do struggle with tension, there are certain gadgets and little tools that you can get to help you with your tension, such as a tension ring, and you'll see some people will wear a little sort of ring that's got little swirl bits on it, and they guide the rope, well, I suppose. They guide the yarn through that, and that's the ring, and that's what causes the tension to glide rather than their own fingers. So it's something to try if you do still struggle with it. But same as I said about the hook, it's just about trial and error, about giving it a go and not giving up in the first go. Okay, so how I hold my tension is, well, I'll need to actually make a slip knot for it, just it's muscle memory, isn't it? So I wrap my hand, the yarn around my hand and then around my finger. So I wrap my hand and my yarn, okay? So that it's given a little bit of give both ways. So I'll show you that as we're working our way through our first little practice. So we're now going to get started using our hook and our yarn for the purpose that it's intended for, which is to start crocheting. So let's go. Okay, so first of all, we're going to make a slip knot. A slip knot is a really useful starting point for crochet, and actually in a lot of other sort of projects. And if you are a crafter at all, if you're a knitter, if you use any kind of fibre crafts, or if maybe you're in the Scouts or you are a sailor, or I don't know, a hangman, well, it's going to come in useful for you. So to make or when you're tying your shoelaces, that's probably a better description. But how you make a slip knot is you use both of your hands. You're using your pincer grip for both hands. So I'm using my thumb and my fingers like this. And then you're going to make a loop and use your thumb to keep the loop in place, whilst your other fingers and hand takes the remainder of the yarn and tucks it through the loop, and then you just pull it, and that makes a slip knot. Okay, I'll show you again. So we take the tension with both hands in our pincer grip, we rotate and make a loop, we transfer the yarn in between our thumb and our finger. Our non-dominant hand is free now, and it's free to take the remainder of the yarn and push it up and through and grab it, and then give it a pull. Now don't worry if it's a big massive loop like this, because the beauty of a slip knot is that you just slide it. Okay, so now we've made our slip knot, we're going to go ahead now and make some chains. As well as a slip knot, chains are one of the most fundamental parts of starting a crochet project, so it's quite important for us to know. So let's get started with that. So I'm going to hold my hook in my dominant hand. I'm going to hold the tail. Now this part here is the tail of the yarn, that's the bit that's left hanging. And this is the working yarn, this is the part that's attached to the ball of yarn. So I hold the tail of the yarn with my thumb and my index finger just to stop the yarn slipping off my hook. Then I'm going to make my tension loop with my non-dominant hand, which again, wrap and wrap. And then I'm going to switch the hold to my non-dominant hand of the tail. So it's got the yarn. This dominant hand is in charge of holding the hook and also just holding the loops that are remaining on the hook from sliding off. And then you'll notice when we're starting that the hook is pointed away from me. It's pointing away from me at the moment. And we're going to yarn over. So what that means is we rotate the hook around to grab on. And I'm not doing a big massive motion, I'm just rotating it round, and then it will naturally hook on, and then notice where it's pointing, it's going up. I'm rotating it with my dominant hand, and then it's turning towards me as it goes through the loop, through the hole, and it's out the other side, and it's back to its resting position, which is pointing away from me again. And that's our first chain. So let me do it again. So it's pointing away from me, the tension still in my non-dominant hand, the working tail, the working yarns in my wrapped around my index finger. The tail is being held with my thumb and my middle finger of my non-dominant hand. My dominant hand is in charge of the hook. It's holding loosely onto the loop in case it slips off. And we're ready to go. So it's pointing away from me, the hook, and then I rotate it gently. It grabs onto the hook, the yarn, and then as I rotate it, it's pointing up to the sky, and then it comes towards me as it goes through the loop. And we've made a chain. That's now 2 chains. So we'll do it again a little bit faster now. So I'm going to wrap, rotate, through it goes. Wrap it again, pull through it goes. And every so often you'll notice that I've readjusted the attention, just so that we don't want to keep working until we've no space left here. So every so often it's just a natural feeling to redo the tension. Okay, so let's do another one. My dominant hand is holding the hook. My pointing finger of my dominant hand is keeping track of the loop that's on the hook. My non-dominant hand is in charge of the tension and holding the working yarn, or as it moves along, holding onto the chains that's been worked, just to give it a little bit more stability and tension. You'll notice that I'm resting my arms, I'm resting my wrists. My wrists are not doing very much work at all. The action is all really coming from the rotation of the hook using my palm grip. Okay, so we're going to wrap it round, pull through, watch the rotation, and then it goes through. Again. And did you see that I naturally let go of the working yarn now that it's moved up a little bit, the chain's working up? So my natural reaction is to move my fingers to match, because we don't want too much tension in there. Okay, so let's do it again. And now, while we're looking here, I'll just show you how many I've made just now. I've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chains. You can tell that because they look like little plates, plaits, whatever you call them, to put in your hair. You'll see little girls with, I would call them plaits, but plaits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. They also remind me of little V stitches, so they look like letter V's, or little ears of corn with the little seeds in there. Okay, so whatever you picture them as, that's the stitch. Okay, so now I've made 6, so I'm going to work a few more just so we've got enough for a little sample. So there's 7. So resting position, the hook's pointing away from me. Working position, the hook's pointing to the sky. Finishing position, the hook's going towards me. Rest, turn, towards me. There we go. So how many have we made now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I think that would be enough for a little working sample. I'm just going to chain 1 extra, and that's going to be my turning chain. So that one is not really counting on this foundation row. I've just done this one to work my next row, and we'll talk about why in the next lesson. So at the moment I'm just going to undo it, and I'm going to let you work as many chains as you can, just practicing. Don't worry if you've made any mistakes. There's not really many things that you can do that's permanent in crochet. If you've made a mistake, you can always rip it out. when you make a mistake in crochet and you have to rip out the stitches, we call that frogging. Frogging because you're rip it out. And in this case, I am going to rip it out so that you can see just how easy it is if you've made a mistake. So I've undone it here, holding the working yarn with my non-dominant hand. I'm holding the end tail with my dominant hand, and I just go pop, 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 just by pulling it gently. And then even the slip knot at the very start, we just pop it out. So I would suggest before you make any projects that you practice this until you get an even, consistent chain, because at the start you will have big holes and small ones, and that's to be expected. So once you've got it nice and smooth and even, that's when you're ready for adding your stitches. Now the use of a chain is so immense. You can simply make it as an extra piece of rope. You could add it to as a fringe detail. There's lots of possibilities, but the main thing is just to practice. So you might end up, when you're first starting out, I'll give it a go and make it a bit wonky. So when you're starting out, you might end up with really tight chains and really big ones, and wee tiny ones, and then you might twist the yarn when you're holding it and it'll look all loopy. And if it looks like that, that's okay. Practice makes progress. But once you've got the hang of it and they all look the same sort of size, you're ready for the next part, which is making a single crochet. And we'll talk about that in the next lesson. So thanks for watching today. I hope you find this useful. If there's anything you want me to clarify, please leave a note in the comments or get in touch through social media or my website. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to see what you've been working on. And if there's anything that you want me to cover that I've not already covered, please, again, leave me a message. If you wouldn't mind subscribing if you haven't already, or liking and sharing, that would be great to help me grow with the channel. So I'll see you next time. Bye, lovely.